Frederic Dimanche is the director of the Ted Rogers School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Ryerson University. He holds a PhD from the University of Oregon and has been a professor at the University of New Orleans and research director of the Ollinger Group. Frederic's session today is titled Regenerating Ontario Tourism Through Smarter Marketing and Collaboration. Frederic writes that culture and tourism share ties and values. Both sectors can work together to ensure the responsible restart of inclusive cultural tourism as Ontario recovers from the pandemic. Okay, so the challenge is to collaborate and make cultural tourism relevant in the recovery efforts. Frederic will give his presentations, and if you have questions for him, please put them in the Q&A function. And as I said before, my colleague Megan will be leading the Q&A session. Thank you, Frederic, and over to you.
Greetings, everyone. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Megan, for hosting me and so many people this afternoon. So you see that I have a background that is not my university background, but I thought I would do something that is on the one hand cultural, and on the other hand, related to the pandemic. This is from an art exhibit, an underwater art exhibit that is taking place in Cannes, in France, on the French Riviera. And for those of you who speak French, it says here, to wear a mask is a dream. So I know we don't think of it as being a dream very often, but just to highlight the fact that we can take advantage sometimes of situations, right? So I'm gonna share my screen if you don't mind, and I will be talking to you and presenting to you a few examples of what we could do in marketing and what is being done in some other countries, particularly in Europe. I draw a few examples from Europe, and then we certainly could open the discussion and see how we could do that in Canada and in Ontario specifically. All right, so regenerating Ontario through smarter marketing and collaboration. So that's, kind of a smart title, right? Smarter marketing. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll try to explore that. I'll give you some hints anyway on what I think we might be able to be doing. So this is the quote that Ruth was reading just a minute ago. Culture and tourism do share tie and values. Those sectors have to work together to ensure that the responsible restart of inclusive cultural tourism in Ontario, as Ontario recovers from the pandemic, which has weakened destinations' competitiveness. The challenge is to collaborate and to make cultural tourism relevant in the recovery effort. So I want to use that and focus on a couple of key words to start with. So first of all, destination competitiveness. We talk about competitiveness all the time, but I want to make sure that we understand what that could mean. For a destination, whether it's Ontario, whether it's a smaller district, a regional tourism organization, or a town, it's an ability to increase tourism expenditure. We talk in economic terms, but more importantly, to increasingly attract visitors while providing them with satisfying, memorable experiences, and to do so in a profitable way, while enhancing the well-being of destination residents and preserving the natural capital of the destination for future generations. So this quote is kind of a standard in tourism academics, and I think it presents well, the various aspects that we need to take into consideration. So, smarter marketing. What do you think I mean by that? First of all, I want to identify the fact that smarter marketing is marketing that identify desired target markets. Very often we find companies, but also destinations, tourism organizations, do some communication that is kind of for all. And I find that as we are going to recover from the pandemic, we will need to be much more focused and much more targeted on very specific type of customers that we want to attract. And we want to attract them because we think that they will bring more value to our destinations. A second aspect is obviously about focusing on key factors of attractiveness from the destination. So if we're talking about Ontario in general, and we heard Minister MacLeod, talk about the different attractions in Ontario, but certainly nature and culture are main attractors, main factors of attraction for the destination. And we need to identify some of those that we want to work with and not necessarily play on every single facet of the destination. The third aspect is about alignment, and I'll come back to this later in the presentation with some examples, but smarter marketing is marketing that demonstrates alignment. In other words, an alignment between the target markets, the products and the services and the experiences that are being provided, as well as the communication strategies for all stakeholders, including internal ones. Internal ones meaning the stakeholders, the professional stakeholders, the contributors to tourism, to culture, to the arts, etc., etc. What I mean by alignment is that all of us must be contributing to the same message, going in the same direction, focusing on the same main keywords maybe, or key attractors, key attractions, key target markets as well, and making sure that all of us are pulling in the same direction. That's what marketing alignment means. And I really think that it's something that we need to focus on more as we try to recover from the pandemic. You may remember that Minister MacLeod mentioned that Ontario is open. We need to open to world visitors. Well, right now the borders are closed, right? So the visitors cannot come. However, it's not too late to start targeting them, because when we reopen, we must be ready and they must know what we have to offer. Creativity and collaboration as well is something that is important to consider as well. Tourism marketing can be very traditional, sometimes boring, I must admit, and sometimes we see a lack of collaboration between the different stakeholders. And we have talked about this in previous workshops with Ontario culture and tourism stakeholders in the past few weeks. We know that sometimes there's not necessarily good coordination or collaboration, if not cooperation, between the different stakeholders. And it's definitely something that we need to work on to make marketing smarter. So the key to smarter marketing to me is alignment, and alignment of our efforts towards the target markets with our products, with our experiences that we want to promote. Now, let me go and give you some examples. And I'll start by a quote that I really like from Elke Dance, in Belgium, the marketing director of Visit Flanders, who, if you don't know this destination, has done a remarkable job in promoting tourism and working on regenerative tourism. Marketing is really about creating value. So as place marketers, we are now looking to create value beyond economic growth. And I think that's something also that we need to focus on in our marketing efforts. We're not just here to bring more people or more money. We're trying to bring customers, tourists, visitors who can also bring something and bring value beyond the dollars that they will be spending in our destinations. This is one of the art pieces that are being promoted in Flanders, actually in Belgium. And that creates, the kind of attractiveness, obviously, but also the kind of word of mouth that a destination may be looking to have. And I'll give you some more example in the next few minutes. Amsterdam, and that's something that you may have read recently. This was just posted a few days ago. Amsterdam is about to launch a campaign for respectful tourism. Again, they're focusing on the type of tourist that they want, not any kind of tourist. And I take a couple of quotes from some of the campaign organizers, in other words, the tourism professionals. Above all, we want visitors who enjoy Amsterdam to come to our city consciously for culture or events, or rich history, museum, and the relaxed nightlife. And they add, the campaign is aimed at visitors with an interest in culture in the broader sense of the word. It is extremely important right now to support the sector and bring the city back to life by attracting visitors who bring something to the city themselves. So once again, we see the effort to focus on very specific target markets, very specific tourists, and to showcase very specific aspect of our destination. What a change from what Amsterdam used to be and what it has been known for over the past few decades. An example from France and the French Riviera, and that's another example in terms of collaboration with stakeholders that maybe we don't think about so often, but art, education, and tourism. And the city of Cannes, which you may know, well known for the Cannes Film Festival, which will be hosted actually in July as opposed to being hosted in May traditionally, they have started a program this year requiring art, culture, and tourism education in local school curricula. So tourism and valuing culture, valuing the art starts at home because we are the first ambassadors of a destination. So I think it was an interesting also collaboration between the schools, the art and culture people, and the tourism people as well. Another example from the French Riviera, I use some examples from the French Riviera because that's where I'm from in France, right? So I know this region quite well. About arts, culture, and craftsmanship. And you see some small towns here that some of you may have heard of. Valais, Grasse, which is the so-called perfume capital of the world. Valais is very well known for ceramics. Picasso had a workshop there when he used to live on the French Riviera. You look at Saint-Paul-de-Vence, which has also hosted so many painters and sculptures, and as well as Biot. Biot is well known for the glass blowers. And what is interesting in those 4 different villages is that when you go visit them, you will see, of course, some of the great artists, exhibits by the Picasso, the César, etc. But also you will have an opportunity to visit the craftsmen who are working in their own workshops and doing their own arts and crafts, basically. And so the tourists, the visitors, will have an opportunity to not only enjoy the destination for, the great painters, also, but for the artists who are currently working on the same type of work and the same type of motifs that the super artists used to work on. Another example from the French Riviera, a little bit beyond in Lemuy, which is a very small village about, I would say, an hour away from Nice on the French Riviera. And you have this Fondation Bernard Venet, who is, as you see, a massive iron sculptures. And you will find that some of the local restaurants around within a 3 to 5 kilometer radius behind it have played on this attraction, the ironwork. And you see this advertisement here. This is actually the gate to this restaurant. Everything with a rusty iron type of feel, and if you go to the restaurant, you will find a similar type of decor, very reminiscent of what the visitors might have seen at the Fondation Venet. So here again, some examples of alignment, but also collaboration between the restaurant sector, the restaurant industry, the culinary arts, and the visual arts. Arts and agriculture, of course, and that's a classic as well. If you have traveled in Niagara, you see that. You see music, you see festivals in the vineyards, but you can see also all kinds of different visual arts as well, whether it's painting or culture related to sculpture, etc. And this is a picture again from the French Riviera in Chateau Lacoste. I will share something with you from Chateau Lacoste in a couple of minutes, but you would see that also in the United States, in Napa Valley, and I'm sure I've not been there, but in some other region of Canada, in the Okanagan, for example, Valley, you might see this kind of thing as well. The whole point is that, again, there is an alignment. The people who are interested in culture, in the arts, happen to be interested in good wine as well. They happen to be interested in culinary arts as well. And so there are lots of connections, a lot of collaborations that could be entertained if we go in that direction. And I will finish because I want to leave a lot of time for discussion and questions. I know there are some people posting some comments in the chats here that I don't have to read at the moment, but in Canada as well, I couldn't help but finishing with a super example from Canada. You all know Zita Cobb, who is the entrepreneur, but also the visionary from Fogo Island. To the question, what should be optimized, she responded, nature and culture, the two great garments of human life. Business and technology are the great tools that can and should serve nature and culture, right? E.F. Schumacher said that in his classic work. But what is culture? Culture is nothing more than a human response to a place. And that's what I think Fogo Island, the Fogo Island Inn, the Shore Fast Foundation that was created by Zita Cobb on Fogo Island have been doing a fantastic job in doing this, integrating culture with nature and creating a sense of place that is absolutely unique, in my opinion, in Canada. So all those are examples of products, mostly attractions. I won't share with you, the different marketing strategies and communication strategy, but I hope that you get a sense that some of the essential elements of what I've shared with you is attractions aligned with target markets, aligned with strategies to promote all this. And if culture and tourism share ties and values, I go back to the slides that I showed you very earlier. Again, we need to collaborate and make cultural tourism relevant in the recovery effort through smarter, aligned, and collaborative marketing. And if you allow me, I'm going to try to, I probably will stop sharing and share again, because I know with Zoom sometimes I have some problem when I do that. But I just want to show you again the example of this winery in southern France, Château Lacoste. So give me just a second to change screen. I will move from here to there, and I'll share again this. And I'll just want to show you a few seconds of what Château Lacoste does. And I'll stop with this. And all I wanted to show with this short video, if you pay attention to each of the sequences, it's all aligned on the same thing. It's all aligned on the same customer who will be enjoying wine, obviously, but also a retail shop, and also culinary arts, and also a hotel, and also a spa for health and relaxation type of seminars. And this is done, they do this for individual visitors as well as for group and events. I'm not saying that we should replicate exactly the same example, that's not the point, but from a marketing perspective, I'm very sensitive to the fact that they have shown a very strong sense of alignment between the various products and experiences that they're trying to showcase, the customers that they are trying to attract, and the communication strategies that they are trying to use to communicate with the customers and to attract them. So this is my presentation. I hope you learned something and enjoyed it. And Megan, I think I leave it up to you to moderate a discussion.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I know Ruth introduced me earlier. I'm Megan from Metcalf. I'm the Network and Programs Director with Ontario Culture Days, and I will be moderating all of the Q&A for today. So you'll see me again. But first, thank you very much, Frederic. That was fantastic. It was a great way to kick off the symposium. I was wondering, we might get that link from you for the video that you just shared. I know the music was not quite synced, so
Absolutely.
see it in their own time.
Actually, I will send it. I will send it and share it in the chat to everyone just now.
Oh, I see it right here. Great, fantastic. Someone's already shared it.
Okay, wonderful.
So we've had a couple of questions come in already. I'm going to get to them, and feel free. We do have about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions that haven't been asked, please put them in the Q&A. So the first one is more specifically about the content you talked about. You were speaking about the Amsterdam campaign and looking at respectful tourism and trying to re-emphasize tourists who are interested in culture, history, museums. Is that not the audience Amsterdam has had or tried to target in the past? And why did they try this new direction?
Well, you know, Amsterdam was not really known for this type of attraction. Of course, there's a museum, of course, there's the Rijksmuseum and some, you know, the classic painters, the Dutch painters and all this kind of thing. But Amsterdam has been suffering for the past few years, in fact, and it's been well documented for what we call over-tourism. And that over-tourism was really the result of a type of customers that they realized they don't want. It's the customers who is rowdy, the customer who is drinking at night in the street, the customer who is going to Amsterdam to smoke marijuana, the customer who is going to the red light district. And those are the type of things that Amsterdam wanted to get away from. They don't want to be associated to this as much as it's been anymore. So they have been thinking for the past year and a half on changing course, basically. And when you think of over-tourism, it's a lot of tourists, and they are willing to reduce the number of customers, they're willing to reduce the number of visitors, and by doing this, changing their image and focusing on different type of attractions. That has been their motivation and their efforts in the past couple of years. You're still on mute, Megan.
Sorry, I unmuted and then muted myself. I double clicked. Another question that kind of ties into this. Someone's asking how we should be thinking about sustainable tourism in a thoughtful way, both in things like marketing campaigns and in advertisements.
So sustainable tourism, as you know, is not a new concept. We've been talking about this, us at least academics, since the late 1980s, 1990s, I should say. It's become a buzzword. It's been focusing a lot on nature. And that's one thing, you know, it's been focusing on nature, even though sustainability is about economic benefit, but also social cultural benefits and benefits for the natural environment. Now there is a new term that is emerging that is, you may have heard about this. I know some of you have, Kate, if you're here in the audience, but people are talking increasingly about regenerative tourism. And regenerative tourism reflects what Flanders is saying, or reflects what Amsterdam is saying. In other words, it's really focusing on bringing better value to the destination. It's not just about being green, or it's not just about, you know, paying attention to the environment and making sure that everybody is respecting the environment. It's really about bringing value to the destination, including the local residents, benefiting the local residents in ways that might not have been thought of otherwise. So this really the trend that we start seeing nowadays.
Yeah, and actually that relates to another question. Rebecca is asking if you have any advice for the best methods for DMOs to connect with residents to ensure that their interests are being considered in tourism strategies.
So absolutely, that's a great question, Rebecca. It's all about engaging the stakeholders, and the residents are probably the main stakeholders. Remember, the tourists are coming to their destination, to their plaza, to their attractions, and they will be using their restaurants and their parking lots and all this kind of thing. So the residents must be engaged, and we talk about community-based tourism development that respect the community, that engages the community, and that asks the community to be an active stakeholder of tourism development. If you look and if you read and if you listen to, I should say, what Zita Cobb is saying, and you will find lots of videos on the web from Zita Cobb at Fogo Island, that's what she's been doing. She's been engaging the residents. And some of those residents have been changing activities, in fact, to contribute to that community development effort and that tourism development effort. So I think there is a lot to be learned from that. Think also about what Cannes has been doing. I give you the example by engaging the students. And when I mean students, I'm not talking about university students, I'm talking about schools, grade school and high school students who are locally involved, locally engaged. And if at school they hear about culture, they hear about the arts, they hear about tourism and the benefits of tourism, they hear about how tourism can contribute to developing their communities, improving their way of life without having the negative effects that we often talked about with tourism, such as the pollutions and such as inflation and such as et cetera, et cetera. So all those kids are going to go back home and have a discussion with their parents, with their peers, and all of this is little by little contributing to changing the culture in a destination. So I think there is a lot at stake in engaging, the community at all ages. They must be engaged because remember, they are the host. They may not be working in the industry, but they are the host.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think someone has asked about the term. So the term is regenerative tourism, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so, and you spoke a little bit about the environment here, and someone has a comment about, they want to get your thoughts on the current systems of tourism within Ontario. For example, a lot of Ontario is inaccessible without a car, or the costs to stay or to eat while you're traveling. Are there ways to be thinking about this in a new way as we're talking about regenerative tourism?
There is definitely ways to think about this in a new way. I mean, Canada is a wonderful country. One of the big difficulties here is that it's so big. Accessibility is a factor. I know that there are some of you that are working on bringing back a train line, to go up north, to go to Northern Ontario. Everything that has to do with facilitating access, either by air or by train, by public transportation, is going to make a big effort and a big difference. Another thing in terms of collaboration, we don't want to talk about urban versus rural. We want to look at collaboration between the two as well. People who visit a city will be happy to have an opportunity to go and visit interesting sites and have culinary experiences and have unique staying experiences in the country, however that might be and how far that might be. But again, they need accessibility. They need to have an opportunity to do so. So it requires collaborations. It requires some efforts. I know RTO 12 worked last year in bringing Porter Airlines from Toronto to Muskoka. That was unfortunately stopped because of the pandemic, but that's the kind of effort that we need to see again, to bring the visitors that we target. It's not all the visitors, remember, you need to target the type of people that you want and find opportunities for them to come to your destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And how to let people know what to expect before they arrive. Someone had a good comment about I think maybe people who are less familiar with traveling, their example was a canoe trip and like city slickers not being safe in a canoe. But I think it more broadly relates to this idea of how we can let people know what to expect before they arrive, so that they know what to pack everything
But
like that.
again, it depends. You're talking about the city slickers. I'm a city slicker, I suppose. I live in the city, but I canoe as much as I can. I go to the island. I paddle, on the Toronto Island. That's my getaway, my easy getaway from downtown. So I think it's possible. Keep in mind also that some of the tourists that you are trying to attract. I know Destination Canada has been working hard on a key number of international markets. For the Europeans, it's going to be the UK, Germany, and France, specifically. You are talking about people who love the outdoors. They may be interested in the city, in the urban attractions, but they want to get away from that as well. Nobody likes the outdoors better than the Germans, for example. And if you can combine some products, some experiences, obviously with the city, because that's the gateway. People are going to be flying in through the big city, especially if you come from abroad, and then take them outside. I think you're going to create some experiences that are very unique, because keep in mind what people think of Canada. They think about nature, right? And if they don't think much about culture, they think a lot about indigenous culture. I think it's an asset that we have overlooked in the past, and that we certainly could use, because it is certainly attractive to international visitors.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was great. And unfortunately, we didn't get to all the questions, but I see we're running out of time. So as Ruth mentioned, we are recording all of the questions. And as we're continuing to develop resources for our cultural tourism project, more opportunities to meet and talk to other people, these will be really helpful. So please keep your questions coming. Maybe another one will relate to the next panel.